drawing the sister wound, and the wound that came up for me in this full moon eclipse was the sister wound, and I was drawing the sister wound, and I came to understand that drawing a wound was indeed about that. There is a kind of ointment that we can put on a wound, and which is to draw out the toxins, to draw them up from deep down up into the surface, and where the light of day can heal, can release and burn the poison away. And so it is with drawing a wound. When we are drawing a wound, we are bringing the wound up to the surface so that we can cleanse. On the surface of our being, we can cleanse with light and air and oxygen. We can release that wound from beneath the substrate where it is causing so much damage, where it is poisoning our soul. And so I drew the sister wound. I began drawing the garden. I was just drawing the leaves like I always do, and these were my favourite leaves in this garden because they challenged me the way they squiggled around, overlapping each other. There were curved lines and there were overlapping lines, and there were intersections between curved lines, each on their own journey, where there was constant overlap and intersection. But at the same time, each leaf had its own journey. And this is what I was drawing. The sacred geometry of the overlapping leaves, each growing in a way that was circling around itself, at the same way as it was thrusting towards the light and thrusting downwards into the soil. This is the way a leaf grows, and a leaf grows like a human soul. A human soul that thrusts upwards to reach the light, and each time it inches further towards the light, it inches at the same time deeper into the darkness. And it is in this dark place where it draws so much nutrition. It draws richness, sustenance and nutrients from the dark place. And at the same time, it is an interaction, an interface between the light and the dark, which is how the leaf grows. And so each leaf was like women in a garden, and that garden was a soul garden, the world's soul. And I noticed, as I drew the leaves, how the sister wound was coming to me with all of these harbored pains and treasures, all the things I had been harboring, all of the heartbreak and the heartache, the suffering, the longing to be accepted for who I am, and the heartache and the heartbreak for not being accepted for who I am, the anger I feel when I feel the other trying to turn me into someone who is an image of their own likeness, trying to turn me into a reflection of themselves, and rather than seeing me as someone unique with my own perspective and my own point of view that might not always mirror theirs, and yet even when it does not, is still just as valid and just as real as their own. And this was the nature of the woundology I drew. The woundology of the sister wound. And as I have experienced that wound, and I wrote these things on the leaves, I wrote that sticks and stones wound our body, but words wound our soul, a wound that cannot be erased. And so it is when a cruel remark is levelled towards our heart, that our heart records, not because of the words, but because of the vibration of the words. We felt the words came as an attack. And often with the sister wound, the words can sound sugary sweet on the surface, but our heart records not what is on the surface, but the sentiment beneath. And so it is that Shakespeare put these words not into Romeo's mouth, but into Juliet's mouth, the divine feminine, because Juliet remarked, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." And so we might consider also that the thorns of a rose by any other name will still pierce the skin and cause the wound that is the sister wound. And so the sister wound comes wrapped in the package of a rose, but it is the thorns that penetrate to the heart long after the rose has withered and died and fallen back into the soil to create another rose bush. All of this cycle has taken its course in the natural way, but the poison of the thorn has stuck inside the soul and festers there. And so I write about the sticks and stones that wound our body, but the words that wound our soul, a wound that cannot be erased. Once our soul records the hatred from another, our soul never forgets. All we can do is draw on that wound to find compassion, to find love, to find forgiveness. The wound becomes our work. The wound becomes our woundology, the particular wound pattern of our soul, and the work, the karma that we have to do in this realm. And I draw here a black cat, and he is sitting on a leaf, and his tail has droplets dripping from the tail. They are blue tears, and the blue tears become larger and larger and until they turn into a tadpole. And then the tadpole, as it spirals, as it charges head first towards the ground that is also the ocean, suddenly takes a 180-degree turn. In the moment it turns into a frog and leaps back upwards, its tongue flicking out to catch a fly, and leaping back towards that very leaf from which that cat sent blue tears, hurtling towards the earth. As a tadpole, the tadpole spun around and faced skywards to catch a fly and leap back up on that same very leaf where that cat, that black cat sat, that black cat of Juliet's. And I write above that, even the heartbroken have feelings, and maybe especially so. It is even those who are heartbroken who have feelings that are maybe especially the most deep feelings. And it may be that those most deep feelings may also be the most valuable ones, because it is those feelings that are the ones that transmute our karma. It is through the deep suffering of the deepest wounds that we draw the biggest medicine, the medicine that can heal not only our own soul, but those ones with whom we connect. And I write down here above this black cat, she said to me, "I can see you in your old age as being one of those mad old women with all the cats." And then I write words hurt more than sticks and stones. It is a memory that lodged inside my soul as a wound, the woundology of the sister wound, the sister who said to me in the moment when she sensed my pain of a fate of being childless and alone in my old age, sensing that primal fear in my soul, elected to articulate that fear in a way packaged as a rose. She said it, and when I looked heartbroken, laughed at me and said I needed to learn to have a sense of humour about myself. I wrote that here. You need to learn to laugh at yourself along with us. And I wrote that around that tadpole that was hurtling towards oblivion into the void, but suddenly, in that moment, learned how to flip around and spin back up. That joker had spun around like that black cat that tumbled from Juliet's balcony, tumbling like a yin and a yang symbol, hurtling towards the ocean that was also the void. And in that moment, went swimming through the ocean, now as a tadpole, as a being who had learned how to breathe underwater, and now evolving into a frog, one who perhaps knows how to live both on land and water, an amphibious creature, more like the human version of the tadpole. The tadpole who was formed by the tears falling from the black cat on Juliet's balcony, she with the broken heart, was now swimming through the ocean of dreams, longings, tears, all the emotions that ever were, the Akashic record of human feelings, that is the cosmic ocean, that ocean from which the whale swam and birthed the human form. And so that frog leaps up towards the leaf with the memory of when she was the one who could swim through the ocean of all feelings and still could swim through the ocean and was not trapped inside of the suffering, but was also free to explore the suffering. And I realized that this was the state where alchemy could occur. Alchemy can occur when we are free to swim through the ocean of feelings without being trapped. I was drawing the sister wound, and the wound that came up for me in this full moon eclipse was the sister wound, and I was drawing the sister wound, and I came to understand that drawing a wound was indeed about that. There is a kind of ointment that we can put on a wound, and which is to draw out the toxins, to draw them up from deep down, up onto the surface, and where the light of day can heal, can release and burn the poison away. And so it is with drawing a wound. When we are drawing a wound, we are bringing the wound up to the surface so that we can cleanse. On the surface of our being, we can cleanse with light and air and oxygen. We can release that wound from beneath the substrate where it is causing so much damage, where it is poisoning our soul. And so I drew the sister wound. I began drawing the garden.